The salt-tinged breeze off the Atlantic had been our quiet superpower for 3 years. It rolled through the open balcony doors of our coastal townhouse in Albufeira, rustled the white linen curtains, and drowned out every noise from the life we'd left behind in the States. For 3 years, Jessa and I had lived in this soft, unassuming bubble, 2 best friends raising our toddler babies side by side, far from the famous, powerful men who'd fathered them and then vanished before we'd even realized we were pregnant. We'd made a pact that night, back when the test results were still fresh and terrifying, before tabloids and security details and broken trust could ruin us. Keep the babies, ditch the dads, stick together forever. And for a long while, it had worked perfectly. I was curled up on the plush gray lounge sofa that evening, watching my daughter Elowen stack plastic blocks on the floor. Her chubby small hands moved slowly, focused, dark hair falling in loose curls over her forehead. She was quiet, thoughtful, nothing like the boisterous little boy next to her. Milo, Jessa's 3-year-old son, raced past the coffee table, his high, giggly voice filling the room as he chased a floating beach ball. I smiled, sipping my cold iced tea, completely settled in the calm routine we'd built. This was the life we'd dreamed of. Safe, uncomplicated, ours. No billionaires, no Hollywood spotlight, no endless questions about why 2 young women were raising kids alone overseas. Just us, the kids, and the quiet peace we'd fought to claim. Jessa walked in from the kitchen a minute later, wiping her hands on her denim shorts, her usual easy grin fading fast. Her phone was clutched tight in her grip, screen glowing bright, her thumb hovering frantically over the display like she was scared to scroll further. I noticed the tension in her shoulders immediately, the way her breath came a little faster than normal, and my casual comfort slipped away, a faint prickle of unease creeping up my spine. "You'll never believe what just happened," she said, her voice tight and shaky, not a trace of her usual light-hearted tone. She crossed the room quickly and dropped down beside me, shoving her phone into my lap. "Look, it's everywhere." I glanced down and my stomach dropped straight to the floor. The screen was flooded with viral photos and trending headlines, all centered on my... The snapshot was taken that morning, out on the boardwalk near our favorite cafe. Sunlight hit his face perfectly, highlighting his sharp jawline, his bright eyes, the exact same striking features that made Kyle Rayner one of the most recognizable A-list movie stars in Hollywood. The resemblance was uncanny, impossible to ignore. Carbon copy didn't even... Comments exploded across every social platform, thousands of people obsessing over the mysterious mini-celebrity look. But it was the background of the photo that turned my blood icy. Blurred but unmistakable, there I was, kneeling in the sand, tucking a strand of hair behind Elowen's ear as my daughter stood tucked safely against my... We'd been invisible for 3 years, off every radar, hidden from 2 of the most well-connected men in one careless viral snapshot, our entire anonymity was shattered. Every wall we'd built to protect our children crumbled in it. Some tourist snapped it and posted it. "It blew up in 4 hours," Jessa whispered, her voice trembling. "Everyone's saying it's Kale's secret kid. The gossip pages are digging. They're trying to find where we are." I handed her phone back slowly, my fingers numb, my mind racing a mile a minute. I'd always known this day might come. Kale lived in the spotlight, every part of his life publicized, scrutinized, picked apart by fans and publicity. But I'd never once thought my own secret would get dragged into the light right alongside hers. Silas Voss was reclusive, yes, but he was ruthless. A self-made billionaire tycoon with a global empire of real estate and venture capital, with endless resources and teams of investigators at all. If a single photo of his unknown daughter surfaced online, he would stop at nothing. I'd left the States 3 years ago, convinced I was doing. Silas had never asked about my life after our briefing. He'd never checked in, never reached out, never showed a single ounce of care for me. I'd assumed he'd never know, never care, that I could raise Elowen peace. Now I realized how stupid that assumption had been. Powerful men like Silas didn't forget loose ends. They just waited for the right moment to tie them. "Need to lay low," I said quickly, my voice sharp with urgency as I turned to check on the kids. Elowen was still stacking blocks, oblivious to the disaster unfolding around her, while Milo continued to boom. No more boardwalks, no more crowded cafes. We delete every social account, lay completely low, eyes down. Jess nodded frantically, her eyed with fear, but neither of us missed the quiet doubt hanging in the air. Viral gossip didn't just die down, Not when it involved a Hollywood A-lister and a mysterious child. The damage was already done. Our location was exposed. Our secrets out in the open for anyone with enough money. The sun set fast outside the balcony, painting the ocean dark blue and gray, the warm daytime breeze fading into a cool, sharp wind. The town went quiet, the usual hum of distant tourists and street fading away. For a little while, I tricked myself into thinking we might still get lucky, that the story would fade, that no one would dig deep enough to trace the blurred background figures back to two ordinary women, hiding in beach town. Then the front gate clicked shut. It wasn't the casual creak of a neighbor passing by or the wind blowing the gate open. It was a precise, deliberate click. Firm, controlled, intentional. My head snapped toward the front hallway, every muscle in my body locking up. The living room went dead silent, save for the soft rustle of Eloan's blocks and footsteps. Even the kids seemed to sense the shift in the air, the sudden heavy tension flooding the room. Heavy, measured footsteps crossed the front courtyard, slow and unrushed, like whoever was outside owned every inch of the space. No one knocked. No one called out. They just moved forward with unshakable confidence, like knew exactly where we were, exactly what we'd been hiding. It had come to take. Pant hot in my chest. I stood up slowly, hands shaking, my eyes darting to Jessa. Her face was pale, her lips pressed tight together, pure tan across every feature. I motioned for her to grab the kids, to back up toward the bedroom, to get them out of sight. She didn't move, frozen in place by fear. Before I could speak a single word, the front door swung open. A squad of men in tailored black suits filed silently into the townhouse, broad, imposing figures blocking every exit. They moved with military precision, spreading out across the hallway and living room, no weapons visible but unmistakable authority. This wasn't local police. This was private security, discreet, highly trained. The kind of team only a man with unlimited power could command. Then he stepped inside, as Voss. He stood in the doorway, tall and broad, his dark eyes sweeping the single cold glance. His sharp, handsome features were hardened by unbridled fury, his jaw tight, his posture rigid with suppressed rage. He looked the same as he had 3 years ago. Dark hair styled perfectly, expensive tailored clothes. The quiet, commanding had first drawn me to him. But there was no warmth left in him, the man I'd briefly known. Right now, he was just a powerful, furious stranger who'd just discovered he'd been robbed of his daughter's life. Breath caught in my throat. I'd spent 3 years running from this moment, never have to face him again. Now he was here, standing in my safe haven, staring me down like the worst kind of liar and thief. My point was to protect my kids. I fumbled for my phone on the sofa cushion, fingers scrambling to unlock the dial emergency services. I didn't care how much money he had, how much power he wielded. No one was taking my daughter from me, to press a single button. In 2 fast, effortless steps, Silas crossed the room toward me. Before I could flinch or step back, one of his hands shot out, capturing both of my wrists in a bruising grip. He twisted my arms behind my back in one sharp, fluid motion, and I heard the soft snap of a leather belt as he looped it tight around my wrists, my hands firmly together. The leather bit in my skin, tight enough to burn, leave it struggle or break free. A large, powerful palm clamped firmly around my waist, back hard against his chest. His body heat seeped into my back, overwhelming and suffocating, his chest rigid with every ragged breath he took, his face lowered to the crook of my neck, his voice low, rough, and deadly calm, dangerous in a way that made my bones shake. Guess how many before the cops even show up? His quiet threat hung thick in the air, heavy and unescapable. Over his shoulder, I could see Eloan freeze mid-movement, his eyes fixed straight on us. My perfect, innocent daughter was watching, confused and scared, as her own father put in the home we'd built to escape him. In that terrifying second, I knew it was true. Our peaceful, hidden life was gone forever. There was no going back, no hiding, no running. Silas Voss had found, and nothing would ever be the same again. The leather belt bit sharply into my wrists, stripping away the freedom I'd spent 3 years building. Silas's hard chest pressed against my back, his warm breath brushing my neck, and thrumming rage coiled tight in every muscle of his body. I froze, too terrified to struggle, knowing one wrong move would ignite his volatile temper. Across the room, Jessa stood rigid, hands flying to cover Milo's eyes to shield him from the chaos. Her body shook, fear curdling into sharp regret. We'd thought we'd outrun our pasts. We'd been completely wrong. Let me go, I gritted out, voice shaking yet defiant. My throat burned with every word, my heartbeat racing. I refused to let my daughter watch me be terrorized by the man who'd fathered her. You broke into my home and assaulted me. This is harassment. It's illegal. Silas let out a low, humorless chuckle that rumbled against my back. His fingers tightened faintly around my waist, a silent reminder of his total control. Illegal? He repeated, cold and cutting. Let's talk about you leaving the country pregnant with my child. Hiding my daughter from me for 3 full years while you built this perfect little life without me. He tilted his head, his nose brushing my hair, voice dropping to a dangerous murmur that sent chills down my spine. I've chased a ghost for months, all because you decided I didn't deserve a choice in my child's life. I squeezed my eyes shut, guilt and fear warring inside. I'd braced for his anger, but not the raw, hollow hurt beneath. The devastation of a man who'd missed 3 years of his daughter's life. I'd once convinced myself Silas wouldn't care about us, that a billionaire tycoon had no room for an unexpected child from a fleeting fling. But pinned in his arms, I admitted the truth. My protective choice had been I'd robbed him blind. I did what I thought was best for Elwyn, I whispered, voice cracking. You never cared about me. You never would have cared about her. My words struck a nerve. He loosened my wrists enough to let me breathe, but kept me locked against him, twisting me to face his stormy eyes. Fury still blazed bright, but underneath lingered bone-deep exhaustion and frustration. You knew nothing about me back then, he said firmly. You made my choices for me before you even told me the... Jessa cut through the tense stuff, her voice shaky and... Whatever this is, can you settle it later? The kids are terrified. She pressed Milo's face into her shoulder to muffle his whimpers, while Elowen stood by her block tower, wide eyes fixed on me, confused and scared by the strange... Silas's gaze flicked to the children, and his rigid frame softened. His rage faded into quiet, cautious wonder as he stared at Elowen, stunned by the sight of his own blood, the daughter he'd never known. He released me and stepped back, and I gasped, rubbing my stinging raw wrists. I darted to Elowen, dropping to my knees and pulling her tight in. She buried her face in my neck, trembling, and I pressed soft kisses to curls, anchoring her with quiet. It's a baby, I murmured steadily. Mommy's okay. Nothing. Silas stood frozen in the center of the room, his gaze locked unblinkingly on Elowen. For 3 years, she'd been my private, perfect, safe haven. Now she was something he intended to claim, a missing piece he was determined. I caught Jessa's panicked stare and knew her feeling. If Silas had tracked us down from a blurred background photo, Kale's team would find him too. Our hidden, peaceful life overseas was completely destroyed. What do you want? I asked, standing and shielding Elowen firmly with my body, tone shiv. You found us. What comes next? Silas crossed his arms, his action unyielding. I'm here for my daughter. I'm not leaving until I meet her properly and be safe. She doesn't know you, I shot back. You can't storm in after 3 years of absence and access. That's how parenting works. Were you ever going to tell me? He challenged sharply. Or let me spend my life unaware I had a daughter overseas. I had no reply. I'd never had a plan. Fear. He'd take her. Fear his chaotic world peace. Fear I'd lose the... Silas took my silence as confession, tightening. I've investigated every detail of your life here. Photo leaked. I know your routines, your home, your peace, and I'm included. His gaze softened on Elowen, who peeked shyly over my shoulder. I want to spend time with her. Now. Panic flared hot in my chest. Elowen was shy and cautious around strangers. Forcing her to engage with this furious unfun was unfair. No, we're all overwhelmed. You can't barge in, scare the kids. Introduction. Silas nodded at his security team, and the silent men filed outside, closing the door behind them. The room felt lighter, yet the tension between us was suffocatingly thick. I'll give you space, he conceded, but I'm not leaving. I've rented the townhouse right next door. I'm moving in tonight. My blood turned cold. After 3 years of total privacy, he was embedding himself in our daily life, an inescapable for every move. Jessa slumped in defeat, out a quiet sigh. Life is over for good. Silas ignored her, his full focus on me. Tomorrow morning we start over. I'm meeting my daughter properly. No more hiding, no more secrets. He stepped closer, gaze intense and unyielding. You built a life without me for 3 years. Now you'll learn to build one with me in it. I stood frozen, clutching Elowen tight. My old, peaceful life was gone forever, burned away by a single viral photo and Silas's sudden arrival. The fight was no longer looming. It was here. And the man who controlled our future was now our permanent, inescapable neighbor. The night settled over the coastal town, quiet and deceptively calm. But the safety we'd clung to for 3 years had completely shattered. Through the thin, shared wall of our adjoining townhouses, I could hear the low rumble of moving furniture, the distant clink of glassware, and the quiet, efficient commands of Silas's staff settling in next door. Every sound was a sharp, unmissable reminder that our privacy was gone. The man I'd spent years running from was now a single wall away, permanently woven into the quiet life Jessa and I had built for our kids. I'd kept Elowen up late, too shaken to settle after the night's chaos. She curled into my chest, her small fingers tangled tight in my hair, her breathing soft and steady as she finally drifted off to sleep. I sat on her toddler bed, back pressed to the cool wall, every nerve in my body wired and alert. I didn't dare close my eyes. Somewhere right next to me, Silas Voss was awake, unpacking his life into ours, mapping out every way he planned to insert himself into his daughter's world. Jessa found me there an hour later, her shoulders hunched with exhaustion, Milo fast asleep in her own bedroom down the hall. She leaned against the doorframe, her face pale and strained, the weight of our ruined peace heavy in her eyes. He's really staying, she murmured, no longer asking, just stating the bitter truth we both couldn't outrun. I nodded, brushing a stray curl off Elowen's sleeping face. He's not leaving. Not this. A bitter, quiet frustration crept into Jessa's tone, sharpened by fear and helplessness. We had everything perfect. No press, no men, no drama, just us and the kids. Then his billions found us. All because my kid looked too much like his famous... She paused, her voice tightening further. Now we're stuck with a billionaire watching our every move. And it's only a matter of time before Kale's people show up. Her word, not because they were wrong, but because they carried an unspoken accusation beneath them. This mess was now mine. The rift between us was small still, but it was growing, fed by the terror that had taken hold of both. For the first time in 3 years, we weren't just two best friends facing the world together. We were two scared women trapped in separate, equally dangerous forms, tied together by a single viral... I didn't have the energy to argue. I knew he was right. Our bubble had popped irreversibly, and waiting passively for the next disaster to hit was no longer... If Silas planned to wage a slow war for access to Elowen, I wasn't going to stand back and let him win. I was done running. It was time to build. By 6 the next morning, the Portuguese sun spilled bright over the ocean, but I was already awake, scrolling furiously through legal resources. I researched local family attorneys, cross-checked international custody laws, and read every clause about non-resident parental right. I needed answers, boundaries, and leverage, fast. What I discovered left me dread. Under local family court guidelines, biological fathers held substantial rights, even with no prior involvement in a child's life. Silas had unlimited money, top-tier international legal teams, and endless resources to drag this fighters. I had only 3 years of primary caregiving history, a modest savings account, and a desperate desire to protect my daughter's quiet, stable childhood. The playing field was brutally uneven. Still, I didn't back down. I picked up my phone and sent an emergency inquiry to a reputable family law firm based in Faro, outlining my situation in careful, concise terms. I requested an urgent consultation, knowing I needed professional backup before Silas. Shortly after sunrise, a soft knock landed on the door. I'd been expecting it, yet my pulse still spiked as I walked to answer, keeping the chain latched for a sliver of safety. Silas stood on the porch, dressed in a crisp, casual button-down and tailored trousers, no security team in sight. He'd traded the menacing fury of the night before for a calm, intentional composure, far more dangerous, in a quiet way. "Good morning," he said evenly, his gaze steady and unwavering as it locked onto mine. "I'd like to see her." "No," I replied immediately, firm and unyielding. "Not yet." His jaw tightened slightly, but he didn't snap voice. "I kept my word last night. I gave you space. I didn't intrude. Now I'm asking for simple access doesn't mean you get to walk in whenever you want. I shot back, keeping my voice low to avoid waking the kids. You can't flip 3 years of absence into unlimited patient overnight. She doesn't know you, Silas. She's scared and confused, and I'm not traumatizing her just because you're His calm facade cracked for a split second, frustration flashing in his dark eyes. You think this is about my readiness? I never got a choice from me. I took nothing from you ever cared to claim. I retorted sharply. 3 years ago, you didn't ask about my life, didn't check in, didn't wonder if I'd with more than memories. You moved on without a second thought. Don't act like this is something you've endured. The words hung thick in the salty morning air, sharp and unapologetic. For the first time since he'd arrived, I wasn't cowering in fear. I was meeting his intensity head-on, refusing to let his power break me. Silas studied me a long, quiet moment, like he was seeing a side of me he'd never uncovered a brief fling years ago. The fierce, unsure I'd become. When he spoke again, his tone was quieter, edged with a raw, weary honesty I hadn't expected. I was young, arrogant, swamped in building my company, convinced every personal connection was a distraction. I didn't stop to ask questions because I assumed you'd reach out if you needed anything. I know that now. It was the closest thing I'd ever get from him. But it wasn't enough. An old mistake didn't erase 3 years of missing birthdays, firsts, and bedtime stories. It didn't give me back the solitary peace I'd fought to build for Elowen. Regret isn't a parenting plan, I said flatly. I'm setting boundaries. You respect them. Settle this in court. His gaze hardened instantly at the mention of court, his billionaire instincts flaring to life. You'd really my daughter into a legal battle? I'd protect her from anyone who tries to disrupt her without reason, including you. We stood locked in a silent standoff on the porch, the ocean breeze sweeping between us, the distant crash of waves. Behind me, I heard Jessa pad quietly into the living room, lingering out of sight, listening to every word. The tension between all of us was thick, unspeakable to escape. Finally, Silas exhaled, back slightly to grant me space. Fine. Boundaries. I'll play by your rules for now. But I'm not waiting weeks or months. I want supervised, short visits starting today. Learn her. I want her to learn me. I hesitated, knowing agreeing felt like surrender, but refusing entirely would only push him to take aggressive legal act sooner. Reluctantly, I nodded. 30 minutes. On the porch. No crowd, no staff, no pressure. If she gets it ends immediately. Silas gave a single sharp nod, fresh and resolute. Done. I turned back inside, my hands shaking slightly as I pressed meeting between father and daughter. I woke Elowen gently, dressing her in a soft yellow dress, whispering quiet reassurance. Nice man outside and hurt her. Still, her small hand clung tightly to my shirt as I carried her to her eyes wide and nervous. Watching Silas sweetly at the sight of her was surreal. The ruthless, intimidating billionaire vanished in an instant, replaced by a man staring at his child with quiet, reverent awe. He moved slowly, carefully, speaking in a low, gentle tone I'd never heard before, afraid of startling her. For 20 quiet minutes, it worked. Elowen watched him cautiously, curious rather than scared, as he pointed out seagulls flying overhead and spoke softly about the ocean. He didn't for touch, didn't crowd her, just calmly and let her grow used to his presence. But even as a fragile piece settled on the porch, my phone buzzed inside the house. I slipped away for a split second to check it, my blood running cold at the new message notification. It was a verified social media account, messaging Jessa's public profile, an official outreach from Kale Rain PR team. They'd found her. Just as we'd feared, the second front of our nightmare had officially opened. There was nowhere left for either of us to run. The fragile peace on the porch dissolved the second I stepped back inside my townhouse. Silas's quiet, tender interaction with Elowen had softened the sharp edge of our standoff, but the new notification on Jessa's phone erased every ounce of calm we'd scraped together. Kale Rayner's PR team had reached out, not with a public inquiry, but a private, carefully worded offer, and the second I saw the verified badge glowing on the screen, I knew our already fractured safety net was tearing apart at the seams. Jessa spotted me staring at her phone and froze instantly, her face draining of all color. She snatched the device up, locking it and shoving it behind her back like a child hiding a mistake, her guilty expression telling me everything I needed to know. She hadn't planned on telling me. Not anytime soon. Not until she'd figured out what she wanted for herself and her son, even if it meant leaving me to face Silas alone. "What is that?" I asked, my voice flat and tight. No room for avoidance. 3 years of unbreakable loyalty, of swearing we'd face every storm side by side, hung in the balance with that single question. Jessa's jaw tightened, her defensive tone flaring instantly. "It's nothing. Just a generic outreach. They're fishing for gossip, that's all." "Generic outreach doesn't come from Kale's verified PR account," I countered, stepping forward, my frustration boiling over after days of unrelenting fear. "You've been waiting for this, haven't you? Ever since Milo's photo went viral. You've been wondering what he'd do if he found out about his son." The accusation hit hard, and Jessa's mask of fear cracked open to reveal raw, selfish frustration she'd been hiding for days. "Don't act like you're any better," she shot back, voice rising sharp and shaky. "You're over here building boundaries with a billionaire who can rewrite our entire future with one court filing, while I'm stuck waiting for the other shoe to drop. Kale's team reaching out isn't a crime. It's a way out." "A way out for who?" I asked bitty. "For you and Milo? What about me and Elowen? We promised each other no more secrets, no more choosing separate lives. That was the crack. No viral photo, no invading billionaire, no Hollywood scandal could have broken on its own. Our pact had always been simple. Wherever one went, the other followed. But fear was rewriting our loyalty. Jessa was tired of hiding, tired of scraping by on modest freelance pay, while I navigated a high-stakes battle with one of the richest men in the world. For the first time, she saw our lifelong promise as a prison, not a prison. While we fractured internally, Silas continued embedding himself into our daily life with calculated, relentless. Every morning, he showed up on the porch for his supervised 30-minute visit, calm, consistent, and impossible. He never pushed boundaries, never overstepped, never argued. He simply showed up, talking softly to Elowen, bringing small, thoughtful gifts, colorful seashells, tiny wood toys, child-safe art supplies. Nothing flashy, nothing manipulative, just quiet presence. The slow, gentle routine worked. Elowen stopped behind me. She started greeting him with shy little waves, leaning in to point at ocean birds and floats. She began to trust him, and every small win Silas earned with our daughter chipped away at much. The more comfortable she grew, the more unreasonable my strict boundaries seemed, to me. I grew paranoid and taut, convinced his soft demeanor was just done. I expected anger, demands, threats, anything I'd against. But his quiet patience was far dangerous. It made me look like the cruel, unreasonable mother shutting a loving father out of his child's life. It isolated me, turning my own. By midday, the rift between Jessa and me had turned into an unspoken war. We moved around the house silently, tending to our separate kids, avoiding eye contact, avoiding conversation. She refused to tell me what Kale's team had offered, and I refused to bestie. The sisterhood that had carried us through 3 years of solitude and freedom was unrest. I thought the worst tension between us, until Silas texted me mid-afternoon, asking to meet me alone on the beach once the kids napped. No demands, no urgency, just a quiet request. I arrived wary and braced for conflict, but what he offered was nothing like the third for. He laid out a structured, generous settlement proposal, typed clean and professional on his phone screen. A guaranteed monthly trust fund payout for Elowen until adulthood, full coverage of all her medical and educational expenses, a fully funded college endowment, and even a new, safer family home anywhere I chose to live. In exchange, I would agree to unrestricted, regular visitation, including overnight stays and weather. These life-changing. It erased every financial worry I had for 3 years, secured my daughter's future beyond anything I could ever provide alone, but with a hidden cost, surrendering my control, my independence, and the private light. "Have to fight me," Silas said quietly, watching my conflicted expression. "I'm not here to take her from you. I'm here to give her everything she deserves. Let me provide for her." I stared at the numbers, the security, the stability I'd always secretly saved for my little girl, and my fear warred with my desperation. For a split second, I almost caved, almost let the safety of his offer override my terror entirely. But then I thought of Jessa's secret brewing in the shadows, of how alone I'd be if she chose to align with Cale instead of me. If I accepted Silas's offer, I'd have no one left to rely on but the man who'd spent 3 years unaware of our existence. If I refused, I risked a brutal call I might not win. I left the beach without answering, my mind spinning catastrophic what-ifs. When I got back to the house, Jessa was standing by the balcony, phone in hand, staring out at the ocean. She typed out a reply to Cale's team, her thumb hovering over the send button, ready to make a single word to me. The second I saw that, all our repressed tension exploded into a screaming fight, the first real ugly argument of our entire friendship. I accused her of betrayal, of abandoning our pact, of choosing celebrity over the family we'd built. She accused me of being selfish and stubborn, of dragging both our families into a pointless war with Silas, of refusing to accept help when we were drowning. "You're so scared of losing control that you're going to lose everything," she shouted, tears burning in her eyes. "I'm not ruining our life, I'm saving mine." "And what about mine?" I shot back, voice breaking. "We were supposed to do this together. You're in your secret Hollywood deal over me." Silence crashed over us after the fight, thick and suffocating. We didn't speak for the rest of the day. We didn't look at each other. Our perfect one completely. That night, I sat alone in the dark, replaying Silas's settlement offer on loop, realizing the truth of my new reality. My best friend was actively making secret deals behind my back, and the man I'd feared most now held all the financial and legal power over my daughter's future. I was no longer just fighting to protect Elowen. I was fighting completely alone. And worst of all, I knew my refusal to answer Silas's offer wouldn't keep the peace. It would only push him to stop asking, taking what he believed was his. The cold silence between Jessa and me stretched through sunrise, heavy and unyielding. We moved through morning routines as strangers, preparing separate breakfasts, dressing our kids in quiet isolation, avoiding every chance to meet each other's eyes. The 3-year promise of stick together felt like a hollow lie, shattered by fear and the quiet greed of a safer, easier life we'd both once abandoned. I'd spent the entire night replaying our fight, convinced Jessa's secrecy was unforgivable, convinced she was ready to abandon me to my war with Silas for a shot at Hollywood stability. I'd also replayed Silas's settlement offer on endless loop, bracing myself for his frustration, his anger, his inevitable legal retaliation for my silence. I expected him to grow cold and ruthless, to yank away the gentle patience he'd shown Elowen and weaponize his wealth against me. Every small sound next door amplified my anxiety, leaving me braced for the other shoe to drop at any moment. But when Silas knocked at the porch that morning, he carried no anger, no demands, no ultimatum. He held only a thin manila folder, his expression calm, almost weary, and entirely stripped of the billionaire's usual dominance. He waited quietly on the steps, giving me space to approach. No security in sight, no pressure in his posture. I stepped outside cautiously, keeping the screen door cracked behind me, my gaze sharp and guarded. "What's this?" "Proof," he said simply, holding the folder out to me. Proof I never knew. Not until the photo went viral. Curiosity overpowered my suspicion, and I took the folder, flipping open the crisp internal documents inside. They were private investigative reports, time-stamped dating back 3 full years, covering every month after our brief summer fling. Travel logs, case notes, digital tracking records, communications from his security team. Every line confirmed the same brutal truth. Silas had 0 knowledge of my pregnancy, 0 leads on my whereabouts, 0 suspicion he'd fathered a child. He had not hunted me for years. He had not hidden resources to track me down. He had not waited to ambush me. The viral photo in Portugal was his very first. My chest tightened, a rush of guilt flooding every defensive instinct I'd clung to for days. I'd painted him as a vengeful, controlling tycoon biding his time to steal my daughter. I'd assumed he'd known, that he'd chosen indifference, but I'd been wrong. Completely, devastatingly. "I never blocked you out of mess," Silas said quietly, watching my face fall as I processed the truth. "I checked for messages once, months after we did. Your number was disconnected, your social accounts deleted. I assumed you'd moved on intentionally, that you wanted no ties to me. I respected that boundary. I had no idea you were carrying." All my righteous anger crumbled. For 3 years, I'd justified my choice to run, to hide Elowen, to paint Silas as a careless, unworthy father. I'd built my entire defense on the lie that he'd abandoned us first. But the reality was far more complicated. I'd fled without a word, erased every trace of myself, and left him with no way to find me. No way to know he... I didn't know, I whispered, staring blankly at the papers in my hands. I thought you didn't care. Caring isn't the issue, he replied, his voice thick with quietness. Trust and transparency are. You took every choice away from me. Now we're both paying for it. His words landed like a weight, solid and unarguable. In that moment, all my fear of his settlement offer melted into clarity. The money wasn't a manipulation tactic. It was his desperate attempt to fix 3 years lost time, to secure his future, to make up for a gap he'd never trade. I lift my gaze, resolve hardness. I can't accept your settlement, I said firmly, no longer out of fear. Taking your money in exchange for visitation feels like selling your time. That's not how co-parenting works. We build this without transactional deals. No contracts, no payouts, no ultimatums. Just consistent access. Silas blinked, clearly stunned by my refusal and my shifted tone. He'd prepared for argument, for defiance, for more secrecy, not for honest compromise. After a long beat, he nodded slowly, accepting my terms with pushback. I can do that, he agreed. I'll wait for your timeline. I'll follow your boundaries. I just don't want to lose her. The fragile truce between us everything. But it did nothing to fix her. When I stepped back inside, I found her standing by the window, her phone locked tight in her hand, her expression distant and closed off. She'd watched the entire conversation on the porch, and eyes held no relief. No joy for my new understanding, Silas, only quiet and resolve. Before I could speak, she tossed out a sentence that upended everything. Kale's flying in tonight. Private jet. He's landing in Faro after midnight. My blood turned cold. You replied to them. You agreed to meet him. I didn't have a choice, she snapped, spinning to face me, her voice sharp and defensive. Your war with Silas is blowing up our lives. The viral story isn't fading. Reporters are starting to dig for locations. Kale's team promised anonymity, no public scandal, no press leaks, if I meet him and let him meet Milo. You should have told me, I said, my voice breaking with hurt. Face this together. You were busy fighting your own battle. She shot back, tears glistening in her eyes. You were too busy defending your choices to care about mine. I'm tired of being collateral damage in your fight. I'm protecting the only way I know how. There was no malice in her words, only exhausted self-preservation, and that made it worse. Our friendship wasn't broken by anger. It was broken by fear, by isolation, by the harsh truth longer save each other. By nightfall, the town fell quiet and hummed thick in the air. Silas remained next door, calm and unassuming, honoring our new truce with quiet distance. But Jessa's secret decision ignited the mid-game crisis that shattered what little stability we had left. Kale Rayner, Hollywood's most elusive A-lister, was minutes from landing on our quiet coastal turf, ready to claim his son. As I tucked Elowen into bed, I realized I'd lost every safe assumption I'd once held. I'd misjudged Silas entirely, lost my best friend's loyalty, and now faced 2 powerful men invading our lives. The worst part, knowing the chaos was only beginning, because Kyle's arrival would expose every last secret we had left. Midnight draped over the Portuguese coastline in black velvet, the usual crash of waves muted by a heavy, suffocating tension that hung over our townhouse. I'd laid Elowen down hours ago, but sleep never came for me. I paced the living room in silence, every heartbeat loud and frantic in my ears, fully aware that Kale Rayner was no longer thousands of miles away in Hollywood. He was here, touching down on the same soil we'd chosen to escape the spotlight, the same quiet sanctuary Jessa and I had built, purely for our kids' peace. Jessa did not speak to me once through the late hours. She busied herself tidying Milo's things, her movements stiff and mechanical, avoiding my gaze entirely. The sisterhood that had carried us through every lonely night of single motherhood, every financial scare, every quiet doubt that we could do this alone, was completely fractured. No more inside jokes, no shared late-night wine talks, no whispered promises of forever. We were just 2 women sharing a house, bound by a broken pact and a mountain of unspoken resentment. Shortly after 1 a.m., a blacked-out private SUV rolled silently down our residential street and parked at the curb. No flashy lights, no paparazzi trailing behind, no fanfare. Classic Kale Rayner, Mastering the art of invisible celebrity. Jessa froze at the window, her shoulders rising and falling with sharp, shaky breaths. This was the moment she'd both feared and secretly craved for 3 years. Facing the man who'd fathered her son, finally letting him see the child he'd never known existed. "I'm going to meet him," she said flatly, grabbing her purse off the counter, not bothering to glance my way. "I'll take Milo in the morning once he's awake." "Jessa, don't do this alone," I pleaded, my voice raw. This is exactly what we ran from. Powerful men who get to rewrite our lives on their terms. She finally turned to me, her eyes glistening, sharp with years of repressed frustration. "You don't get to lecture me anymore, Lila. You fixed your mess. You made peace with Silas. I still have mine to hand." Before I could reply, she slipped out the front door, closing it softly behind her, leaving me alone in the quiet house with 2 sleeping children and a storm I could no longer control. I stood frozen in the empty living room, realizing the brutal truth. I had no one left. My best friend was gone, off making her own deals, and the only person left nearby was Silas, the man I'd spent 3 years running from, the man I'd once wrongfully demonized. I expected the night to pass in quiet tension, but the chaos arrived faster than I could brace for. An hour later, my phone lit up with an urgent legal email from the family law firm I'd contacted days earlier. My blood turned cold as I scanned the formal text. Silas's legal team, despite our verbal truce, had filed preliminary parental claim paperwork with the local. It was not a full custody battle, but it was an official, irreversible legal step to establish his paternal rights to. Dread crashed over me in brutal. I'd trusted our quiet compromise, believed his softened demeanor and honest apology meant we could navigate co-parenting. I'd been naive. Billionaires did not wait patiently for handouts. They secured what they wanted, legally and imminently, while their opponent leapt. I threw open the front door, crossing the narrow grass strip between our townhouses and banging sharply on Silas's front door. The door opened instantly, like he'd been waiting for me. Silas stood in the dim entryway, casual nightwear replacing his usual formal attire, his expression calm. "Explain the court filing," I demanded, voice shaking with rage and betrayal. "You said we'd do this fairly. No contracts, no ultimatums, no legal moves back." Silas did not flinch at my anger. He leaned against the doorframe, his gaze steady and uncertain. "I said I'd follow your boundaries. I never said I'd leave my legal status." "This is manipulation," I snapped. "You're weaponizing the law to pressure me." "No," he replied firmly, unyielding. "This is accountability. You spent 3 years erasing my existence from my daughter's life. I'm not leaving my right to her up to your mood, Lila. I'm securing my place permanently, so no one can ever again." His words cut deep, sharp, and true. I did that he was right. I hated that every defensive choice I'd made in the name of protection had given him every justification to fight control. By 2 a.m., I hit my absolute bottom. My best friend had abandoned our pact to bargain alone with a Hollywood star. The man I'd finally started to trust had legally locked himself into my daughter's life. Warning. I was isolated, outmaneuvered, and completely out of options. Every wall I'd built for safety had crumbled at once. Every safeguard I'd put in place proven useless against the power I'd hidden from. I returned to my dark, empty townhouse and made a desperate final choice to protect my peace and my child. I packed a small overnight bag for Eloin, grabbed our essential documents, and texted my lawyer to initiate a temporary separation. Before dawn broke, I moved us out of the shared townhouse entirely, into a private, small rental apartment on town. The move was a permanent fix. It was not a solution. It was my last desperate attempt to regain a sliver of control in a life that had spiraled commands. As I settled a sleeping Elo in an unfamiliar bed, my phone buzzed with a new message from Jessa. Short, cold, final. Kale wants full supervised access to Milo. He's not backing down. We're both stuck now. I stared at the screen in the dim dark, every ounce of my fear solidifying into unshakable resolve. Running was no longer an option. Hiding was no longer possible. The only way out of this chaos was straight through it. I would no longer react in fear. I would fight. For my daughter, for my independence, for the life I'd built. And in the morning, I would confront both men head-on, with a calculated plan that would flip every single power dynamic upside down. Morning broke over the Portuguese coast in soft golden streaks, burning away the midnight darkness that had swallowed our peace for weeks. The ocean breeze drifted through the open apartment window, calm and unrushed, a stark contrast to the storm of chaos, betrayal, and fear that had upended our carefully built life. I stood by the glass, watching sunlight spill over the rooftops, Elowen fast asleep in the bedroom behind me. After months of running, fighting, and crumbling under the weight of my own choices, I was finally ready to stop reacting and start resolving. I'd spent the entire night drafting clear, unnegotiable co-parenting boundaries, no longer rooted in fear or defiance, but in fairness and stability for my daughter. I'd learned the hard way that power didn't come from hiding, secrecy, or cutting people out. It came from clarity, consistency, and refusing to let anyone, no matter their wealth or influence, strip me of my role as Elowen's primary caregiver. I texted Silas one simple request: meet me at the boardwalk at 9 a.m. No security, no lawyers, no games, just us. He arrived exactly on time, dressed in a plain white shirt and casual trousers, no entourage in sight. The ruthless billionaire edge was gone, replaced by a quiet, weary humility I'd never seen from him. For the first time since we'd reconnected, he didn't carry anger, demand, or entitlement. He carried regret, gratitude, and a quiet desperation to do right by the daughter he'd missed for 3 years. I didn't open with arguments or accusations. I laid out my terms plainly, firmly, and fairly. Elowen would remain in my full-time primary care, rooted in the stable, gentle childhood I'd spent years building for her. Silas would have structured regular supervised visitation that gradually expanded as Elowen grew comfortable with him. Weekday afternoons, weekend outings, and eventually overnight stays, all on her timeline, not ours. No sudden moves, no court battles, no public spectacle, no attempts to uproot her life. I also addressed the secret court filing that had shattered our fragile trust the night before. You secured your legal rights out of fear, I told him calmly. I understand that now. But fear can't be the foundation of how we raise our daughter. From this day forward, every choice is transparent. No more behind-the-scenes moves. No more power. Silas didn't argue, didn't push back, didn't leverage his wealth or legal power to bargain for more. He nodded, his gaze steady and clear. I was wrong to file without talking to you first. I acted out of the terror of losing her entirely, the same terror you've lived with for 3 years. I'll withdraw the preliminary claim today. All legal steps moving forward will be mutual, collaborative, and centered. It was the truest apology he'd ever given me, not words, but action. In that moment, the last of my resentment faded. We weren't enemies anymore. We weren't lovers. We were two flawed people who'd made costly mistakes, bound forever by a little girl who deserved nothing less than peaceful, consistent love from us. While I settled my future with Silas, Jessa faced her own reckoning down the coast with Cale Rayner. The Hollywood star had arrived craving control, desperate to contain the viral scandal and claim his hidden son for his own curated public image. But after spending a single morning with Milo, watching the loud, fearless little boy laugh, run, and cling inside, his celebrity arrogance crumbled into humility. Cale didn't demand full access, didn't threaten legal action, didn't try to sweep in and rewrite Milo's life. He recognized Jessa's years of soul sacrifice, the quiet strength it had taken to raise their son in secrecy and safety. He proposed a slow, private co-parenting agreement of his own. Discreet visits, no paparazzi, no public announcements, no uprooting their quiet life. He would be a present father behind closed doors, while letting Jessa continue to give Milo the stable, normal child protected. By midday, Jessa and I found each other on the empty beach, the tension between us finally softening after days of cold silence and betrayal. Her eyes were red from crying, but her shoulders were relaxed, unburdened for the first time since my viral. I was so scared, she admitted quietly, staring out at the waves. Scared I'd lose Milo, scared the split would ruin us, scared I'd have to choose between safety if we built. I made a selfish choice because I thought it was one I had. I squeezed her hand, letting go of my own hurt and anger. I understood her fear completely. We'd both run from our pasts, both fought to protect our kids, both stumbled and made flawed choices under unbearable pressure. Our pact hadn't broken, we turned on each other. It had broken because we'd both forgotten we were allowed to be scared. We don't have to run anymore, softly. We don't have to hide. We just have to do this differently. We rebuilt our friendship that afternoon, not as the reckless, fear-driven girls who'd fled the country 3 years prior, but as mature, grounded mothers who'd survived the storm together. We set new, healthy boundaries, promised honesty over perfection, and vowed to never let again. In the weeks that followed, our chaotic new normal settled into quiet, beautiful peace. Silas every promise he'd made. He withdrew his court filing, showed up consistently for gentle visits with Elowen, and never once tried to overtake control. He used his resources quietly, responsibly, covering Elowen's schooling, medical care, and future savings without transaction, without expectation, simply because he wanted to give his daughter served. Elowen slowly bloomed in his presence, growing from shy and cautious to warm and playful around her father. She never had to choose between her mom and her dad. She got to have both, rooted in the safe, quiet life I'd built for her. Kale, too, agreement with Jessa. He visited Milo privately every few weeks, flying in on quiet trips away from Hollywood's spotlight, learning his son's personality, laughing at his chaotic energy, and slowly building a father-son bond fame and pressure. He never exploited their story, never leaked a single photo, never dragged the world. We moved back into our shared townhouse a month later, not as two girls running from their pasts, but as two strong mothers embracing our futures. The wall between us no longer felt like a barrier. It felt like proof that we'd survived, grown, built better than before. I fell back into old fear. I never lost my independence. I kept my life, my daughter's stability, and my self-respect. Silas gained the family he'd never known he'd missed, healing the empty, work-obsessed void in him without taking anything from me. Our story didn't end with a perfect fairy tale or a dramatic victory. It ended the way real adult life always does, with hard choices, forgiven mistakes, healed fractures, and hard-won peace. We'd fled America to build a safe life for our kids, and found something better than hiding. We found courage, beneath the endless Portuguese sunset, with our kids playing happily on the sand, and the two men who'd once threatened to destroy our lives now standing respectfully in the background, present but never over. I smiled at Jessa. 3 years prior, we'd made a pact to stick together and build a life without the dads. Today, we'd rewritten that promise entirely. We didn't need to ditch the dads to be safe. We just needed to own our lives, our boundaries, and our power. And for the first time in my life, I was truly, unshakably home.